Art Ed Hub grew from the meeting of curriculum and lived artistic inquiry. This is where that thinking becomes practical. So let me show you around. I wanted to take some time to show you around the site because when you first arrive, you'll see these different areas across the top. The IB Hub, the Art Practice Hub, the Creative Intelligence Hub, the Members Hub, and ArtEd Musings. They might initially look like separate areas, but they are actually completely interconnected. So I want to show you not only what you can find here, but also how the different parts of ArtEd Hub speak to and support one another. I'll start with the membership options, just so that you can understand what you have access to. The core membership gives you full access to the IB Hub and the Art Practice Hub, as well as the Members Hub and all of the ArtEd Musings. This is really the central membership for visual arts educators because it gives you the curriculum support, the artistic practice resources, and, importantly, the classroom material that brings those two areas together. The mentorship membership includes everything in core, but it also gives you 5 individual 60-minute sessions with me, along with light email support between those sessions. This is for teachers who would like somebody to think alongside them as they navigate their own timetable, students, and particular teaching context. And then the Art Practice membership gives you access to the Art Practice Hub and all of ArtEd Musings. That is more specifically for artists, makers, therapists, or anyone interested in intuitive practice, symbolism, and Jungian exploration. Let's begin with the IB Hub. The IB Hub grew directly out of my experience working on the development of the new IB Visual Arts course, creating teacher support material and designing workshops, piloting aspects of the course with students, and then actually teaching it in my own classroom. The course overview, core areas, and assessment objectives are freely available to everyone. So even if you're not a member, you can come here to begin understanding the architecture and the language of the new course. But within the member resources, you will find much more. There is a complete 13-stage course plan, which provides a possible structure for moving from early teacher-led inquiry through increasing student autonomy and eventually into the assessment tasks. It isn't intended as a rigid prescription. It gives you a coherent route through the course, something that you can use to understand the progression and then adapt to suit your own school, timetable, and students. Then we have the IB support cards. These are where I take language, expectations, and teaching questions that can sometimes feel quite dense and unpack them into something practical and usable. There are cards on writing reflections, word limits, student-generated inquiry, studio dialogue, neuro-inclusive learning, the extended essay, teaching SL and HL together, structuring the different assessment tasks, and many other aspects of the course. For example, if I open Understanding Situate, you can see that the card does much more than give you a definition. There is an overview, the bigger picture, and a breakdown of the different ways an artwork or art practice might be situated. It helps us think beyond the idea that context is just a piece of factual research added afterwards. There is also practical support too, a mini exercise, prompts, or something that can be taken directly into your own thinking or classroom. So the cards are designed as quick reference tools, but they also help us reach a deeper understanding of the ideas underpinning the course. You are free to share these cards with students in a shared library. If we move into assessment tasks and samples, you can see that every assessment task is supported. The art making inquiries portfolio, the artist project, the connections study, the resolved artworks and selected resolved artworks. I'll open the AIP as one example. Here you can download a complete sample that I created using authentic evidence from student practice. The intention is to show what this new component might genuinely look like while retaining the individuality and the voice of the student. Alongside the sample, there is a teacher assessment pack, and this breaks down every criterion and looks closely at where we can see particular qualities within the sample. There is also a student-friendly assessment sheet and a clear visual overview of the criteria in action. The aim is not to give teachers or students a formula to copy, it is to make the assessment language more visible so that we can understand what it might look like without losing the creativity, authenticity and individuality at the centre of the course. The Art Practice Hub connects very closely with the IB Hub, but the language here is deliberately different. This is not primarily about assessment or course requirements. It's about being a practicing artist and understanding the act of creating as a way of knowing. The Art Practice Hub emerged while I was developing my own art practice through a Jungian lens and asking what it actually means to become a more authentic practitioner, to make work that isn't just technically successful or externally validated, but that has a real relationship with who we are. At the moment, there are 3 inquiry threads: identity and self, archetypes and collective narratives, and transformation and vision. More will be added over time, but these already provide very different conceptual and material starting points. If we enter identity and self, for example, you can see the guiding question: how do personal experiences, environments and perspectives shape our sense of self, and how can we express that creatively? Within this thread, there are 6 different project cards moving across photography, collage, painting, printmaking and sculpture. I'll open montage and identity as one example. So you can download the complete project card, which provides a clear practical invitation and enough structure to help someone begin. It could be used as a focused standalone experience, or it could build from the project before it and lead into something more sustained. These aren't projects where everyone should arrive at the same outcome. They create a set of conditions from which something individual can emerge. Alongside the project cards, we have the skills cards, and these range from composition, drawing, mark making and materials and surfaces, to montage, mixed media, meaning finding, sculpt and thinking like an artist. So if I open mixed media, you can see the structure again: a quick reference, the bigger picture, why it matters, practical things to try, and an artist whose work helps us understand the idea in practice. So technique is certainly present, but it is always connected to visual thinking, meaning, and artistic intention. The insight cards take us into another layer. These are rooted more explicitly in Jungian thinking and explore things such as active imagination, archetypal symbols, authenticity, co-creation, the unconscious, and the embodied image. If I open the embodied image, again we have the overview, the bigger picture, key concepts, and things that we can try. These cards ask us to pay attention to what happens beneath the surface of making, what the body knows, what the image may be carrying, and what might emerge before we can explain it intellectually. They are not really lessons, they are invitations into a different relationship with image making. The Members Hub is probably the most important space to understand, because this is where everything begins to come together. It is organised through threads that connect with the 13-stage course plan. You'll find teacher-led inquiry, student-led inquiry, the AIP artist project, connection study, resolved artworks, selected resolved artworks, as well as a growing collection of unit plans, task packs, assessment tools, videos, and other classroom resources. It is a living area. I'm adding to it as I teach, as the course develops, and as members raise questions that reveal where more support is needed. Teacher-led inquiry is a good example of how the Members Hub works. Here you can see the identity and self-inquiry thread that I showed you in the Art Practice Hub, but now you can see what happened when I actually taught from it during the first term of the course. If I open Unit 2, you can see the project cards, skills cards, insight cards, and IB support cards that I brought into the unit. Each one is linked, so you can move directly from the classroom sequence into the relevant resource. You could follow this step by step if that support would be helpful, but more importantly, it allows you to see the thinking behind the structure, why a particular card was brought in at a particular moment, and how practical exploration, conceptual inquiry, and curriculum understanding can support one another. The original identity and self-thread provided my starting point, but when I taught it, I made quite a lot of changes. This is exactly what I would hope you would do too. This is not a scheme that asks you to reproduce my classroom. It is my lived practice, shared openly enough for you to take what is useful, understand the thinking, and then respond to your own students. And at the bottom, there is also support to help you build your own inquiry thread, because the longer term intention is not dependence on my projects, it is increasing confidence in creating structures that belong to you and your context. The Creative Intelligence Hub expands this thinking beyond the visual arts classroom. It asks, what does it mean to be human in an age of AI? As AI becomes increasingly capable of performing cognitive tasks, I believe we need to understand creative intelligence as an absolute essentiality, not an optional extra, but a vital part of being human. This area introduces the creative intelligence workshops that I offer to schools, educators, teams, and organisations, either in person or online. The workshops move through awareness, embodiment, and integration. People make, respond, collaborate, and reflect, often without knowing exactly where the process will lead. Art Ed Musings is where I write more freely about the ideas, experiences, and research feeding into all of this. It is part artist studio, part classroom, and part inner terrain. Some of the pieces are practical, some are research-based, and some are very personal. For example, when students cross a threshold reflects on the end of my students' time with me, not only what they had made, but what they had become through the process. Other musings explore uncertainty, neurodivergence, Jungian psychology, assessment, consciousness, creative intelligence, and what it means to teach from the inside out. This is where the philosophy remains alive. It is where I can question, notice, research, and continue working things out rather than pretending that any of these ideas are ever completely finished. And then right at the bottom of the site, there is a slightly hidden gem called the Heart of Art Ed Hub. If the rest of the site shows you what is here, this is where you can understand more about why it exists. And here you can also learn about the artuitive process, which is my adaptation of the creative process from a much more intuitive, symbolic, and psychologically aware starting point. It is a non-linear process based on responding rather than controlling, allowing meaning to be uncovered rather than imposed. So although these look like separate hubs, They all grew together. The IB Hub came from my work with the new curriculum, whilst the Art Practice Hub emerged through my own art making and Jungian research. They meet in the Members Hub, where those ideas become lived classroom practice. Creative Intelligence and Art Ed Musings carry the same inquiry further. So start wherever you need to start. Everything is connected, and I hope this tour has helped you see both what is here and the thinking that holds Art Ed Hub together.